New president with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. set to take over from Rodrigo Duterte in July and lead the country for the next 6 years. He's a son of former President Ferdinand Marcos, who's deemed by many as a dictator. According to unofficial results, Marcos Jr., also known as BONG-BONG, earned a landslide victory, defeating his main rival, LAHI Robredo. He declared victory on Wednesday, saying his electoral triumph is a boost to democracy and promised to seek common ground across the political divide. So, what drove many Filipino citizens to vote for Marcos Jr., and how could his term affect future Seoul-Manila relations? For this, we're joined by Geoffrey Madatu Kalimag, professor at the Department of Global Business Administration, School of Global Studies at Kyongsang University. Good evening, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So, Professor, let's start with the basics. So, for our viewers from across the globe, can you give us a background of who will be the next president of the Philippines?
Well, the presumptive president of the Philippines is a son of a deposed dictator with a namesake of his father, Ferdinand Marcos. And according to his father's diary, he described the younger Marcos as a spoiled brat child. And the family exiled and fled the country in 1986 and came back in the early 1990s. Since they returned, the presumptive president, BONG-BONG in particular, has been active in politics, going his way from being governor of the province in his province in Ilocos Norte to become congressman and a senator. In 2016, he lost to incumbent Vice President LAHI Robredo, and also he claimed to have obtained a degree from the University of Oxford, but the university confirmed in 2015 that he has not finished a degree. He also enrolled in the MBA program of Wharton School of Business in the United States, but he have not finished either. So to which his tuition and fees, a monthly allowance of $10,000 and the state he lived in while studying in the US were paid partly by the intelligence funds and partly by Swiss bank accounts. Apart from the disqualification cases related to tax issue, the presumptive president also has 203 billion pesos estate tax obligation to pay to the government.
Right. Well, there are many conflicting opinions about the presumptive president, but many people who didn't vote for Marcos have expressed concern due to his family background. Can you also tell us more on who his father is and what impact he had on the Philippines during his ruling?
Well, to be fair, the first years of his father's term in office as president, the Philippines was relatively in good state. And this is one of the reasons why the Asian Development Bank is headquartered in Manila. The same is true with the Harvard-modeled Asian Institute of Management. However, in general, there was a massive corruption through cronyism, nepotism, and the likes. Clinging into power, then President Marcos became a dictator. What happened is that they twisted a construct to support the declaration of martial law that perpetuated human rights violations that include torture, death, disappearance, silencing the media, and there was no freedom of speech. And this had huge and negative impacts on all facets of the Philippine society. The economy crashed, leaving the country with gigantic debt. There was also a moral issue here, where people questioned the lavish lifestyle of the first family, whereas many Filipinos at the time are in dire situation and in deep poverty. There was no freedom, no concept of truth. Only Marcos was then the truth. If you go against Marcos, you will be charged for subversive activities.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen again this time around. But now let's turn to Marcos' policies. Previously, he said that he will follow some policies of the outgoing President Duterte, who focused on economic growth. Now, what do we know about his diplomatic policies? How do they differ from Duterte's?
Marcos was not present in many of the debates during the campaign period. And therefore, I could not really identify which policies of the Duterte administration will he continue. But in one of the interviews he had with a local media outlet in the Philippines, he mentioned that he will continue the build policy of outgoing administration. And when it comes to diplomatic policies, how it differs with Duterte, Unfortunately, as I've said, as far as the diplomatic policies are concerned, again, his absence in the debates and public forums gave us a vague direction on his policies. And this is simply because he has not laid any clear-cut diplomatic policies, and neither that he released an official statement on his stand on many issues. But on the issue of West Philippine Sea, he is more pragmatic, stressing the need to avoid confrontation. He just mentioned that he will protect the territory of the country. And so I bet that we may just wait and see on what policies he would pursue.
So we will have to wait and see. Now, Professor, so you mentioned about his policies on and how it's different from President Duterte's policies, but how would you evaluate the presumed president's, I'll do it again, sorry. So how would you evaluate the South Korea-Philippine ties under the presidency of Duterte?
Oh, well, South Korea and the Philippines, there's no doubt they're friends and they cooperate in many areas with stable social, cultural, economic, and military relations. And under President Duterte, the relationship of these two countries have been steady. I would say South Korea is the Philippines' 8th trade partner for export of goods and also received the most arrivals of foreigners into the country. Moreover, the Korea-Philippine trade volume is increasing. The total investment of South Korea to the Philippines is also promising. And there were arms and defense deals signed. The Philippines have always been a supporter of peace in the Korean Peninsula. For the several times, the Philippines was hit with natural calamities. And South Korea has always been there to extend significant amounts of assistance. And I must emphasize, too, that South Korea is also one of the most preferred destinations of overseas Filipino workers. So the relations of Korea and the Philippines during the Duterte administration is very stable and very friendly.
Right. Let's hope that could continue again with the new administration. Like, speaking of the new administration, South Korea and the Philippines both are welcoming new presidencies. So what can we expect from future interactions? What more can be done?
Departing from former President Moon Jae-in's New Southern policy, as we know that he really looked into the importance of Southeast Asia, departing from that and taking off with a new or improved version with the administration of President Yoon Suk-yeol, I look forward to the proposal of the ABCD strategy in approaching Southeast Asia. The ABCD strategy stands for A, advance human capital, B, health or build health security, C for